Uh, Good afternoon. I was about to say morning. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Senator Nikki Merritt. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And I want to start out with that the message that I need everyone to understand here today is that the GLBC, the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, is watching. In every corner of the state, we are watching and ready to call out injustice where it strikes. We are here to push back on behalf of all marginalized people. We have two pieces of legislation that are absolutely unacceptable, and we're going to talk about those once we finish the first part of this press conference. And we are rallying to stop. Some of the injustice that we are seeing as we approach Shiny Die. We have HB 127, which is the attack on DI programs in our state. We also have a bill that cheats our voting, and it actually works to anytime it seems like we get more black citizens to come and vote. Now we want to change the rules, so we will speak on that. But right now we want to speak on behalf of Sparta and the injustice that is happening with eminent domain and the plans to have a railroad come through the land and the property of those who have been living there for years. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the press conference over to Representative Al Williams, and he is going to open us up on that subject, and then we have some speakers who will be speaking on behalf of Sparta following Representative Al Williams and Representative Spencer Fry. So with that, Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to my colleagues and those from the Hancock area. There's one thing for sure, we have gotten nowhere without the invoking the Spirit of God. So I'm off the program a little, but we're going to ask God to be here with us because that's who ultimately is going to have to help us. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for those who have come. We thank you for the strength of Hancock. And Lord, we just lift you up, for it is in your name we pray. Amen. I spent a good deal of my life, long as it has been, standing at courthouses where corrupt public officials took lands from black people, lands that dated back to Reconstruction and actually the signing of Article 15 by General Sherman. Stood there at homes with grieving mothers who had put their land up to get somebody out of jail and had lost it for a pittance of what it's worth to corrupt public officials. We stand here now. Eminent domain was made into law for the purpose of public use, not private gain. Obviously, we have a Supreme Court that does not agree with that assessment. But you come and generations of land takes a strip out of the middle to enrich further just a few people who are already rich. This land was all a lot of these people had. And here we are today. I couldn't think of something more fitting to say than what the General Secretary of the Presbyterian USA said at the 1963 March on Washington, where I was honored to be standing in the crowd. When the General Secretary said, "We've come late, but we've come to set the record straight." And it's time to set the record straight. This is not time for those who are faint of heart, and there are certain folk with a lot of jingle in their pocket that can make us silent. These folks set us up here to speak power and speak their needs. And so we're here to tell the state of Georgia this is wrong, this is abusive. You have robbed those who have nothing left to be robbed of after you had taken so much. Let's forget about the foolishness of this session, crazy legislation with just enough words called God in it to make it seem justified. It is unjustifiable what happened to the citizens of Hancock County. One little railroad needed 4 miles to further enrich by hauling some gravel out. And now they claim, in spite of all the noise and dust, we'll move a little farther out and put up some barriers and stuff, but that will not replace the land. We need to stand tall and stand with them. We need to stand regardless to what has been said, because I'm old enough to remember when the Supreme Court was not even our friend, but we fought on. And sometimes we need to remember the struggles of the civil rights movement when we sang songs like "Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around." Let's dust off our shoes and be aggressive in helping these folk from Hancock County who has been robbed. Oh, there's a lot I can say, but I'm going to stop here to get good to me. I'm going to ask you now to please listen to my colleague and good friend, State Representative Spencer Fry. Thank you.
Y'all, we got to clap after that. You know, as a son of a preacher and working with Representative Williams for a long time, I hate coming on after him, but here goes. You know, you might be wondering what I'm doing here. Well, I am a associate member of the Black Caucus. It's a very welcoming organization, and Senator Merritt, I appreciate your leadership and for organizing this. You know, in the United States, the number one way that it has been proven to build generational wealth is through land ownership. And what we think about when we say land ownership, single family homes, but this is an issue that I discovered, it means a lot to me personally. When we have a family farm that had a utility condemn part of the land and we're given pennies on the dollar for a one-time payment, it's heartbreaking. And I, obviously, am a white man in the South. What we're talking about right now are the things that have been going on in this country for 400 years, longer than that. I had the opportunity to speak to Miss Jan, who'll be introduced in a second, and it's heart-wrenching to see a farm bisected by a 50-yard wide swath for a railroad track with one crossing in that property. It may have changed by now, but that's what it was described to me when I read the documents. Can you imagine having a farmland that's been in a family for 100 years and now having to give it away for pennies on the dollar to a private entity to haul gravel, while currently they're doing it with a road, and they can still do it with a road. But they want to put a railroad in the middle, take these folks' property away. This is not the United States that I was born into. This is not the Georgia that I was born into. But this is what we are going to be fighting over and over and over again until we can put a pin in it and call it done. And we've got the family that's going to speak here in a second, and I appreciate y'all making the trip and coming up. It's so good to see you. But right now I need to introduce an advocacy organization. Come on up here, Larry. Larry Riley is an advocacy represents the advocacy organization, and he's here to help us advocate for this family, for their generational wealth, and for the wrongs of private industry taking private property for private profit. Larry?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming out for this very important occasion. So thank you. I want to extend my gratitude to the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus for hosting this event and standing with the residents of Sparta on this critical fight. Today we gather here, not here just to speak, but to stand firm against a long and familiar injustice, one that has taken land, stripped wealth, and erased histories. The ADOS Advocacy Foundation stands with the landowners of Sparta. Their fight is our fight. We have seen time and time again how black families have had their land stolen, whether it's through violence, legal maneuvering, or corporate greed. Families forced out, generations robbed of opportunity. The racial wealth gap didn't happen by mistake, and land theft has been one of the driving forces. And now, Sandersville Railroad Company wants to continue that legacy under the false pretense of public benefit. Let it be clear, this is not about the public. This is a private railroad company seeking private gain at the expense of Sparta landowners. This community was never consulted because their best interest was never a priority. This past Sunday, our organization traveled to Sparta. We sat with the residents, listened to their stories, and captured their truth. What we heard was resilience. What we saw was a community unwilling to back down. Many of those affected were veterans, men and women who fought for this country. And just as they fought on foreign soil, they are prepared to fight here to the very end against the Sandersville Railroad and Benjamin Tarbutton. This is not just a Sparta issue. This is a justice issue, a black wealth issue, a Georgia issue, and it speaks to a larger truth, one that this country has yet to fully reckon with. Black Americans, who are the descendants of slavery, are owed a debt that has accumulated over generations of theft, exclusions, and economic sabotage. Reparations are not just a moral necessity, but an economic imperative to restore what has been taken. This fight in Sparta is one chapter in a much larger story. Until that debt is paid, until black land and black wealth is protected, our work is not done. To the residents of Sparta, you are not alone. We stand with you. We will fight with you, and we will not rest until this land remains in the hands of the families who built it. And now I want to introduce you to the leaders of the No Railroad Coalition, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and Mrs. Sally Garrett. Thank you.
Come on up here, sweetie. Come on here. Come on, Miss Sally. Good afternoon to everyone. It's very emotional for me right now, and that's because my husband and my sister here in Christ, we've been fighting 3 long years to keep what is ours. I'd like to introduce you to my husband of 45 years, a retired school teacher, a veteran, the father of our 3 sons, 2 who fought in Iraq. He's taught overseas. Those are children just make me, I just want to cry when I see those little children because he taught little children. When he started off, he was healthy 3 years ago. Halfway through, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The doctor said the stress of the fighting, the stress of him up at night knocking on doors and fighting for his family land, our land, of over 100 years, where he was raised. He was raised in the house his father was raised in, and he lives on the land that his grandfather fought so hard for, and that we now live on and have raised our children. I'm also a retired Georgia school teacher, and I'm also a veteran. I served during Desert Storm. I'm also an Army brat. I've lived all over the world, and I know injustice when I see it. This beautiful lady standing over here next to me has been a right arm, a left arm. She's been a prayer partner. Their property is next to ours. I'd never met her before until this happened. We came together in a county that is divided, white and black. It goes back history with legacy of plantations, plantation owners, racism, even today. But she and Mark and I have bonded in something very common. Her family has legacy. She wants to keep her family land. I've seen her little grandchildren come and play on their family place for Christmas. It's a sight to see, you all. Now I'm going to say this. This fight isn't about the Black Smith family land. It's not about the white Garrett family land. It's not about the Griggs and the Rigg family. It's about 50 American families also living in a small rural communities. Families who can trace their history back to slavery and the long, brutal journey on slave ships from Africa. This fight is about land ownership for people across the country. It is about our rights, specifically the Fifth Amendment right that says property can only be taken for public use, not private gain. But in this case, Mr. Tarbutton and a few of his business associates want to take our land for their private use, to move their goods using Mr. Tarbutton's freight train back and forth through our property and community. Mr. Tarbutton has tried to paint our county, Hancock County, as poor and in desperate need of his millions in tax revenue. But we already have, Hancock County already has a CXX train line and two of the largest foreign-owned quarries, Heidelberg and Vulcan quarries, within 5 miles of our property and our homes. I ask you this, why can't they get on that train? Why do they have to have another train? These businesses have been in our counties for over 30 years. Has our economic situation changed? No. It's only gotten worse. So ask yourself, is this spur going to really help us? Let me be clear. Mr. Tarbutton, president of the privately owned Sandersville Railroad, wants something from us, our land, to run his freight train through. We want nothing from him except for him to leave us alone. Let him go back to Sandersville, Georgia, and focus on helping the poor black families who live on Ty Beach Street. And I challenge you to go to Ty Beach Street and see how those black people have to live with a train running down their street. I've been there. I go there to encourage myself and remind myself this is a fight worth fighting, because this is what's going to happen to us. To Governor Kemp. To Governor Kemp. We're not millionaires like the Tarbuttons. We wouldn't even be standing here today asking for help if it weren't for the pro bono attorneys for the Institute of Justice and the Southern Poverty Law Center who took our case. They're not outsiders. They're just people who see people hurting and have a cause and have a fight, and they say, we're going to get in it with you. When they first met us, they said, we're going to be in it with you to the end, Miss Smith. We're not going to leave you alone. They came down and saw our situation. Do you know how much 3 years of legal fees would have cost us? A lot. We didn't even have enough for a month of legal fees. The property owners, Governor Kemp, Governor Kemp, the property owners and 50 families from the Shoals Road community in Hancock County are asking for your support. We are asking you and the judges to re-examine an outdated law from the 1800s that give a private railroad the same power as national freight trains. We're also asking you not to allow the Public Service Commission, I'll say that again, the Georgia Public Service Commission, whose members have accepted campaign contributions from the tar buttons, to let one hearing officer make such a life-altering decision for our families and our communities. Because folks, if that train comes through there, we're going to have to leave out of there. We will not be able to live with 2 freight trains and 2 rock quarries and an asphalt within 5 miles of our home. Not through eminent domain. Not through eminent domain. We're not asking Mr. Tarbutton, the judges, or the state of Georgia to give us anything. You got to understand, we have been there, some of us over 100 years, 150 years. I know my family has lived there 30 years. Miss Sally has lived there longer than that. We've paid the taxes. We've lived there. We did not go to Sandusville, Georgia. We did not beg and ask Mr. Tarbutton to come to our county. He felt the need to write us a letter. He didn't even have the dignity to knock on the door and call us on the phone. He just told us in a letter what he was going to do to us. Take our property. So we're asking you to let us keep what's already ours. God gave it to us. Jesus gave it to us. He did not give it to us. That's injustice. Our ancestral land, land our enslaved ancestors worked, land our families fought in wars to protect, and land where some of our own were even lynched, that means hanging, for defending their own freedom. I want to thank you right now. I get real emotional and I've been getting in a lot of trouble. But it's all right. Because I think, wasn't it John Lewis, y'all help me, that said his mama used to say, boy, what you been out there doing? And he said, Mama, I've been out there getting in some good trouble. And that's what I've been getting into. And I didn't mean to get emotional, but I left some people back on Shoals Road and some friends, and I'm going to say this, Senator Fry, so many people, the slaves, this organization right here with Larry has, and there's some people out there and people all over the country, you all. They're looking at Georgia. They're looking at Georgia. This is no longer a Georgia situation. So Georgia, what are you going to do? Are you going to let this country, this world, watch you hand over land, not only my land, our land, Smith land, Garrett land, Reed land, an entire community of families where that train's going to run literally in their backyard. I don't care what you read about football fields, folks. Come down. They're watching to see what Georgia is going to do for its people. All right? Thank you all very much for listening to me. Did you want to say something? You good? Did you want to be good, baby? Yeah, I can go. You're good, baby? Yeah, I can go. Don't be long, baby. Okay, my baby. You're going to be sure. Okay, baby.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Smith, and I am from Shoals Road. My grandfather bought the property on Shoals Road where we live. He bought 600 acres. It's been over 100 years ago. And none of that is taken into consideration when it comes to taking that land from us. We have fought this fight for 3 years now, and we're going to continue to fight it. I have 3 sons who I want to continue this legacy. And I'm sure the Garretts, they have sons who they want to continue their legacy. We don't want anybody to take this from us. We got a letter in the mail some 3 years ago, and he told us, this is Mr. Tarbutton, he told us that our land would be needed for a project that he has. And that's all he said. He didn't say anything about any kind of compensation or I'm sorry. He didn't say anything to none of that effect. It was just that we need it. And so we didn't quite know what to do when we first got that message. That's the first we'd ever heard of anything like that. And then when we told him that he's not welcome to come on our property that way, he told me that he would call the sheriff's department and have them to remove me. You know, and we've had this property for over 100 years. My grandfather bought it in 1926. And we could never believe that we would hear anything like this. So we just kind of didn't know what to do at first. And so then we decided, okay, let's fight. And it's been an uphill battle ever since. It's cost us all kinds of monies. It even cost me my health. You know, this worrying about this thing and that I was going to lose my grandfather's property. And if you don't think that could work on you, and then here's a man with millions of dollars telling you he's going to take it, you know, and you don't have that kind of money. But like Jan said, though, we think the Poverty Center, who else, Jan, what's this? Institute for Justice, these people stepped in, and they have been fighting this battle for us for all this time. And we thank them for that. And I guess one of the other things I want to say is everybody else in this room, what you have, you make sure that you put it in a situation where nobody can come and take it. Because this is what happens to us. He didn't ask us. He didn't say that that's what he wanted to do for any good purposes. He just said he needed it. He wanted it. You know, but then he came up after we had something to say. He said that it was for the good of the people. And we haven't seen anything good for the people in this yet. It's good for him and his own. He wants to take what our family has and give it to his family. And we've cried, we've done everything. We didn't know. But okay. It's
They got some more people got to speak.
okay.
Okay. Thank you, baby.
Sorry I took so long, but
That's okay. Come on
It's-
over here, baby.
it's,
Come over here. Come over here with me. Come over here with me.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard today pain, frustration, and this is just clearly a case of the rich coming in, and let's call it what it is, stealing land from everyday citizens that have lived, that have history, and have built history in their families on that land for decades. And unfortunately, we're seeing the rich, the powerful, and big business do this across the nation. But we need to take a stand here in the state of Georgia. And I want to thank the residents of Sparta for coming down here to share your story today. We are with you. We are ready to help lift your voices on this issue and stick with you and do whatever we can. So I call on everybody today that's listening to us to reach out to Governor Kemp, reach out to the legislators in this state, Tell them what you've heard today. Help the residents of Sparta stop this big business from coming in and taking what is rightfully belonging to those that live there. So with that, we're going to take questions, and if y'all stick around, we do have a little more a piece to do as we talk about some other things that are happening here, but we are opening up for questions for anyone that has any at this time. Question? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you those from the press that have come. Thank you all for showing up here today and speaking out, and let us know what else we can do to help. All right, and with that, we're going to end this portion of the press conference. Okay, everyone, we're going to shift here a little bit. We still have members that are going to stay here and speak about this issue. We have two other issues to talk about really quickly, and I want to hit on the injustice that we saw last night play out on the Senate floor as we work to push back and stop HB 127, that is an attack on DEI in our state. And last night, after the majority prematurely ended discussion, they showed that they were unwilling to be accountable and to hear the concerns of GLBC members. I have never seen such an act of disrespect in the Georgia Senate during my time at the Gold Dome. We were silenced. All we were seeking to do was to take a poorly written attack of a bill and make it better. To try to fix it, actually. We had 19 amendments that the Senate Democrats introduced, and we were not able to talk about any of them. Rules were used, procedures were used to silence us and shut us down. And it specifically threatens funding. HB 127, the anti-DEI bill, threatens funding for educational program or discussion, and it is systemic oppression and social injustice, among many other things. Tell me how we can talk about Martin Luther King or John Lewis or two of Georgia's greatest citizens and champions of social justice without discussing systemic oppression. We also have HB 397, which is packed full of policies blatantly designed to shift powers in ways to help the majority cheat to win by changing the rules because they can't run elections on their own merit. It appears that the majority party is no longer willing to win support at the ballot box by passing policies that Georgians support and are asking for. So they have worked continuously to engineer the results that they want, and they want to change the rules of the game every time Black people get close to winning elections. I'm now going to pass the podium on over to our leader, our Senate leader, Minority Leader, Senator Harold Jones, who's going to go further in depth with important information about both of these bills. Thank you.
Thank you. And one of the things that you'll notice about this is all of this is connected. As it's been stated, it's the powerful versus the powerless. So we're really talking about DEI bill, the voting bill, also the things that are happening with these folks here in Hancock County and Washington County. It all is the powerful versus the powerless. Over this summer, Georgia plans to counsel 455,000 active voter registrations, one of the largest voter purges in the United States history. These registrations take the form of persons who have been moved. Also, it takes the form of people who have not participated in the last 2 general elections. First, no one should ever be removed from a voter roll because they have not voted. There could be various reasons why they have not had the opportunity to vote. Those reasons, number one, could be that they're not voting actually tells you that they have a distrust or mistrust or they don't believe in the system. And it is our job to actually bring them back to the polls. But that does not mean that they're not interested in voting. Also, they may not have had transportation for those particular actions when those voting dates took place. There could be various reasons why a person may miss voting. To remove a person off the voter rolls because they have missed a vote is wrong. And Georgia is prepared to purge almost 100,000 people who fit this particular category. This purging, though, comes on the backdrop of HB 397, which Senate just passed. Now understand this. These purgers are based on data produced by ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center. But HB 397, which actually the Senate passed, says in July 1st, 2027, Georgia will be removed from ERIC, and according to Senate Republicans, we're removed from ERIC because we don't trust the ERIC system. So understand, on the one hand, you have the Georgia Secretary of State, who is actually going to remove 100,000 people, a total of 450,000 people using this ERIC system. And on the other hand, you have this Republican Senate that is saying they don't trust the ERIC system and they actually want to come off of it. The absurdity of this cannot be overstated. Another aspect of 397 is that they would not allow counties to accept absentee ballots after the advanced voting has actually taken place. So the advanced voting ends on that Friday. What some counties were doing was establishing absentee ballots locations that a person could still actually bring their ballot there on that Saturday or Sunday. HB 397 has eliminated that opportunity. And the theory was that some counties or counties may not be able to handle people dropping off their ballots on Saturday and Sunday because the election is on Tuesday. But we actually had people who came to testify and say the people that are picking up or receiving the ballots on Saturday and Sunday, they're not even the same folks necessarily that will be working on Tuesday. But here's the bottom line. Counties should have the opportunity to make that determination. We up here in the state capitol should not prevent counties from actually being able to determine whether they want to have ballot access on Saturday and Sunday. As usual in this state capitol, Republicans only like local control when they actually can control it. So here's what we must do. This is what the voters need to make sure that they do. Number one, if you have missed a general election vote, you need to contact your Board of Elections and let them know that you still want to actually vote. Even though the rule is, and what the Secretary of State is using, is the last 2 general election votes, I would encourage anyone who's missed a general election vote to make sure you contact your Board of Elections. Secondly, if you have moved and returned in the last year, make sure that you contact your Board of Elections. If you have moved, but you have returned in the last year, please contact your Board of Elections and let them know you are here, you are now registered, and you want to vote. And then third, if you receive any mail from the Board of Elections, do not discard it. Make sure that you open it, read it, and if it requires a response, make sure that you actually respond. This bill, HB 397, is not set in stone yet. It still has to go to the House. So we encourage that the House will actually defeat this particular legislation, and we also encourage people to realize that the Republicans are engaged in this voter suppression and actually trying to prevent people from voting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Senator Merritt.
Okay, we have one more speaker. We have a student here. DEI? Yes. We gotta go. We got one more speaker. You gonna speak on the DEI? Yes. Okay. We have one more speaker today. We have Brandon, and he is going to talk a little bit about the DEI bill. That's HB 127 that passed through last night, and we're going to let Brandon have the microphone.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Brandon. I'm a student at Georgia Tech, and I'm here today in between classes to plead with our Georgia State House representatives to vote no on HB 127. I'm very disappointed to learn that this bill for teacher leave was being hijacked with language from a bill that did not pass by the crossover deadline, and that many of my fellow Georgia Tech students have spoken up against. I'm here to continue speaking against it because I know that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are designed to give every student students like me a fair chance to work hard and succeed. Supports for this bill argue that DEI programs have become discriminatory, that merit has been replaced by sympathy. But I stand before you today to say that this is not the entire picture. DEI is an acronym. It stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Much of the outrage has been directed at diversity, perhaps because it's easier to pinpoint. Numbers can be counted, demographics can be tracked, but that narrow focus misses the deeper work DEI does. So let's turn our attention to the other two. Let's take a moment to talk about equity, ensuring fair treatment, access, and opportunity for all individuals. Picture a student applying to a prestigious university. A student who does everything that they can with what's available. A student who shows up to school every day. A student who has the potential to excel at the university, but they cannot because of their low income area. The resources available are just not enough. Their application is overlooked, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lacked access to the tools needed to build a good one. You cannot claim to value merit while ignoring the barriers that prevent students from competing on equal footing. Then there's inclusion, creating environments where everyone feels welcomed, respected, and supported. Think of the student who uses a wheelchair every day alone during recess because they can't access the playground. The bill would prevent schools from creating programs that bring that child into the community. I could fill a bookshelf with stories like these, both unique and deeply common. Stories of students who aren't asking for shortcuts, but are asking for shoes so that they could also race equally. Yes, some DEI programs are not perfect, but we do not abandon it. No, we amend, revise, and evolve, because the vision it aspires to is worth the effort. This bill is a sign of our representatives giving up on those who need help the most, turning their backs not because the work is done, but because the work is hard. The aim of DEI is not to replace merit, but to reveal it, by removing the noise of systematic barriers, unconscious biases, and unequal access. Let us move forward, not because it is easy, but because it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. I want to thank you again for joining us. We'll open up for any other questions that anyone has out there. And if not, thank you again for joining us and enjoy your afternoon.